Have you ever been in a conversation where the other person was speaking, but instead of actually hearing their words, your brain was just furiously building your next brilliant response?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're so busy preparing our defense that we completely miss what the other person is actually trying to share with us.
Right. It's like you're nodding and looking highly intelligent, but inside you're just, waiting for them to take a breath so you can jump in.
Exactly. You just want to perform.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. And since this is part of our Skillify English series, we are going to be using our story-based English learning approach.
Which is such a great way to learn.
It really is. So for our learners tuning in, the language today will be clear and paced for that B1, B2 comprehension level. But we're tackling a very real, very modern communication trap based on some fascinating psychological sources.
We really are. The urge to win a conversation rather than actually connect with the person in front of you.
Yes, and our mission for this deep dive is to unpack why we do this, right? Like what it costs our relationships and how to master the art of meaningful conversation using some highly actionable techniques.
And we're also going to do a little word tour today.
Yes. We're going to naturally highlight 4 target vocabulary phrases for you to practice. So if you're nodding along right now because you're guilty of rehearsing your next sentence while someone else is talking, you are not alone. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have the cheat codes to fix it.
So to start, there's a phrase from our sources that is slightly painful, but just so accurate.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, the mental waiting room.
The mental waiting room. It's such a perfect image.
Right. It's the state where you aren't actually participating in the conversation.
Yep.
You are physically taking up space in the room, but mentally, you're just waiting for your turn to perform.
You're just in a holding pattern. But, I mean, why is that? Why is it so incredibly hard for us to just sit quietly and listen to another human being?
Well, according to the research, it really comes down to deep social anxiety.
Anxiety, like even just chatting with a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We treat casual chats like performances or like tests that we have to pass.
Oh, wow.
Because we fear that if there's a silent pause, it means the conversation will die
Right.
and will look boring.
Nobody wants to be the boring one.
Exactly. So in this panic, our brain desperately searches for a cool story or, a really smart word to jump in with. Evolutionary biology actually tells us that rejection from the group is dangerous.
Like, historically speaking. Back in the caveman days.
Right. So your amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, it fires up. It tells you that if you don't say something interesting immediately, you'll be cast out of the group.
So it's basically a literal fight or flight response, just triggered by a 3-second pause at a coffee shop.
Yeah, it really is. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real physical threat and a social threat in that split second.
That is wild. It makes me think of a courtroom trial.
Oh, how so?
Well, imagine you are a lawyer in a courtroom, right? When we get anxious in a conversation, we instantly adopt that lawyer persona. We are so busy preparing our defense and our cross-examination that we completely tune out the witness's actual testimony.
Yes, you're just waiting for the gap to insert your own monologue.
Exactly. And if we're just taking turns delivering monologues, I have to ask, what is the actual cost of this behavior?
The cost is huge. When we do this, we fall into our first word tour vocabulary phrase for today, which is selective listening.
Ah, selective listening. Let's break that down for our Skillify English learners. Selective listening is when you only hear the parts of a message that you want to hear or the parts that serve your own purpose.
Perfect definition. You're only pulling the fragments of data from their speech that let you plan your next response.
Right, which means you're ignoring the rest. You just mentally turn down the volume on everything else they're saying. Which actually brings us to our second word tour phrase, tune out.
Yes, to tune out.
Meaning to stop listening or paying attention to someone or something, like when you're watching TV and you completely tune out the traffic noise outside. Or in this case, tuning out your friend's story.
Exactly. And when you tune out, you miss the gold. You miss the subtext.
The really important stuff.
Right. Because communication is rarely about just the literal words. It's in the emotion behind the words. It's the small hesitations, the drop in pitch, the true meaning of the message.
So if your brain is maxed out drafting your own speech, you have zero processing power left to catch any of those details.
None at all. And the tragic irony here is that by focusing entirely on your own performance to try and save the connection, you are actually destroying whatever connection was already there.
You completely miss the reality of the person right in front of you.
Yeah. And research shows that when someone feels truly heard, When they sense you aren't using selective listening, their natural defensiveness just drops. That is the only way genuine human connection happens.
Okay, so the natural question then is, how do we break out of this? How do we leave the mental waiting room?
Well, the sources suggest we need to shift out of performance mode and switch into what they call detective mode.
Detective mode, I like that. So approaching the conversation like an investigator instead of a lawyer.
Exactly. A good detective doesn't walk into a room and start shouting about how smart they are. They observe. They look for clues.
They listen to understand rather than listening to reply.
Yes. Detective mode means your goal isn't to prove your worth anymore. Your goal is to figure out the reality of the other person's experience.
See, I love the idea of putting on a detective hat, but I'll be honest, it is really easy for us to sit here in a studio and say, just listen.
Oh, sure. In theory, it's easy.
Right. But in the heat of a conversation, when your brain starts to panic plan, it is incredibly hard to stop. How do we actually break out of this trap in real time?
You need a mechanical override. You need to short-circuit the panic. And the sources offer a really simple, actionable technique for this. It's called the 3-step reset.
Okay, walk me through that. What's step 1?
Step 1 is purely physical. You take one slow breath.
One breath. Does one breath actually do anything?
It totally does, especially a slow exhale. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which sends a chemical signal to your brain to hit the brakes on the fight or flight response.
Oh, wow. So you're literally telling your body, hey, we aren't in danger. We're just talking to Sarah from accounting.
Exactly. It stops the immediate panic. Then step 2 is to gently name the feeling in your head.
Name it, like out loud.
No, silently to yourself. You just say, I'm feeling anxious about what to say next.
Wait, why not just push the feeling away? Why give the anxiety attention?
Because pushing it away takes a lot of mental energy. Naming it actually moves the blood flow in your brain away from the emotional center and back into the logical, rational part of your brain.
Okay, that is fascinating. You're turning the lights back on in the rational brain just by acknowledging the feeling.
Right. And then comes step 3, which is a grounding question. You silently ask yourself, what do I want the result of this moment to be?
Oh, I love that. What do I want the result of this moment to be? That instantly shifts the goalposts.
It really does.
Because when the panic sets in, your goal is usually, I need to impress them with a fancy speech. But that question changes the goal to simply, I want to make them feel comfortable.
Yes, it anchors you back to reality.
Right.
And once you've done that reset, you're officially out of the mental waiting room.
Okay, but the conversation is still happening. Once I'm grounded, how do I actually engage without, falling back into my old habits?
This is where we bring in a tool called zooming in.
Zooming in, like with a camera.
Exactly like a camera. When someone shares something, our anxious brain wants to zoom out to the macro level to find a way to relate it back to ourselves.
Oh, I do this all the time.
Right. If they say, I went to Spain last month, zooming out looks like you saying, oh, I love Europe. I went to Italy 3 years ago.
Yeah, and we do that because we think we're building a connection. We think we're playing a game of catch, but really we just dropped their ball and threw our own ball at them.
Exactly. From their perspective, you just changed the topic to yourself. So instead, you need to zoom in. You catch their ball and throw it back by asking about a specific detail they just mentioned.
So keeping the camera analogy, I need to switch to a macro lens. I need to focus tightly on Spain.
Yes. You ask, which city in Spain was your favorite? Or, what was the highlight of the trip? By doing that, you prove you aren't just waiting for your turn.
You're actually participating in their story. Okay, that makes total sense for casual topics, but let me push back a little here.
Sure, go for it.
What if they share something really deep or difficult? Like, what if a friend says, I'm completely failing at my job and I don't know what to do? That is usually when my mind goes completely blank.
Because you feel like you have to fix it.
Yes. Because I don't know the right advice to give.
Well, the good news is you don't need to be a life coach offering a 7-step solution. In fact, offering unsolicited advice in those moments can feel really dismissive.
So what do I do instead if I can't offer advice and zooming in feels too aggressive?
You use the mirror word technique.
The mirror word technique. Okay. What is that?
You simply identify one small emotional keyword they just said, and you repeat it back to them using a soft, warm tone.
Wait, can you give me an example?
Sure. If your friend says, work is just so overwhelming lately, you don't offer a scheduling app. You just take the emotional word overwhelming and you say it back softly. Overwhelming.
Okay, overwhelming. I mean, Doesn't just repeating a word back to someone feel a bit unnatural, like a parrot?
People always worry about that.
Yeah.
But it's all in the tone and intention. It doesn't sound like a trick if your tone is warm. It's actually an act of pure empathy.
Empathy. Okay, that is our third word tour vocabulary phrase for our Skillify learners. Empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. It's putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. By using a mirror word with empathy, you bypass their conscious filter and you validate their feelings.
And there is our fourth and final word tour phrase. Validate. To validate means to recognize and accept someone's feelings or opinions as real and logical. You aren't judging them, you're just accepting them.
Beautifully explained. Yes, you validate them. You signal, I heard you, I see your emotion, and it's totally okay to feel that way. You aren't rushing to fix it.
You're just saying, I want to hear more.
Right. And usually the person will feel so seen that they'll just keep unpacking the feeling on their own. They end up solving their own problem just because you gave them a safe space.
Which brings up a really crucial element here, the space that comes right after that mirror word.
Yes. The final and probably the most difficult concept from our sources. Brave silence.
Conquering the pause. Why is it called brave silence, though? Why does it take bravery just to not talk?
Because we view silence as awkwardness. We assume a pause means the conversation has failed. So we rush to fill the empty space with noisy filler words.
Oh, totally. Just to avoid the awkwardness.
Right. Brave silence is the confident choice to let a quiet moment exist. It's the restraint to let the other person sit with their thoughts without you rescuing them from the quiet.
This beautifully connects to music, honestly.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, music isn't just a continuous wall of sound, right? If it were, it would just be noise. It would give you a headache. The magic of a song, the emotion, it happens in the space between the notes.
The rests.
Exactly, the rests. Conversation needs that empty space, too. If we are just launching walls of words at each other, there is no rhythm. We need brave silence to let the meaning really land.
That is a perfect analogy. And when you synthesize all of this, detective mode, zooming in, mirroring, and brave silence, it actually takes all the pressure off of you, the listener.
Because I don't have to invent a brilliant response from zero anymore.
Exactly. You don't have to carry the whole conversation. You just use the ingredients the other person gave you. You reflect it back.
Active listening isn't just about making them feel good. It literally saves my own energy.
Yes. Because the goal of a conversation is not to win. The goal is to connect.
The goal is to connect. I love that. All right, let's recap this journey for everyone listening. We started by exploring the anxiety-driven trap of the mental waiting room.
Where we use selective listening and just tune out the other person to plan our next speech.
Right. And then we unpacked the 3-step reset to short-circuit that panic. One slow breath, naming the anxiety, and asking that grounding question.
Then we talked about shifting into detective mode by zooming in with follow-up questions.
And for those heavy emotional moments, we learned how to use a mirror word with true empathy to validate the other person, all followed up by the superpower of brave silence.
Letting the space between the notes do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So to you, the listener, here is your challenge. Tomorrow, when you feel yourself stepping into that mental waiting room, catch yourself. Take a slow breath. Step out of your own head, put on your detective hat, and truly tune in to the person in front of you.
And, just to leave you with one final thought, if we practice brave silence and deep listening in our personal lives, how might that change the way we interact with the rest of the world?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. I mean, we live in this era of hyper-fast, reaction-driven digital media where everyone is just shouting to be heard. So could the simple act of truly listening be the ultimate modern rebellion?
The ultimate modern rebellion. I think it just might be. Because when you spend your whole life building a defense, you eventually realize you're the only one left in the room. Thank you all for joining us on this Skillify English deep dive. Practice those word tour phrases, use that brave silence, and we will catch you next time.